Why do Sony colors suck, especially on my older 8-bit Sonys? And why do I always reach for my FX3 and the S-Cinetone? And is the grass always greener? Well, sometimes yes, and that's part of the problem. Now, do you ever take a picture or a video of a subject and you want to show them what you just snapped, but since you shoot in a flat, mushy log profile, or worse yet, with no picture profile, and you get this super crunchy, oversaturated pile of steaming magenta, and you have to preface first by saying, now just wait till I get this in Lightroom or color grade it, trust me, it'll look good, hopefully. Or when I'm traveling with a camera and I just at the end of the day want to review my shots and I have to also convince myself that I'm pretty sure I can make this look good after a few hours of tweaking and conversions and color grading, and this is why in a pinch, like I said, I reach for my Sony FX3 because it has this amazing picture profile, S-Cinetone, a neutral, pleasing to the eye color space that is great to shoot with and review. But it's not perfect, and worse yet, it's not on my older 8-bit Sonys who are green with envy like my Sony A7C or ZV1, well, until now. But there was one massive problem that almost derailed this whole experiment, and it's probably something you've experienced and blamed yourself for. But first, so why are Sony cameras straight out of the box with no picture profile on so bad? Why do the colors look like that? It doesn't even make sense, especially again, now that we know S-Cinetone exists. So why didn't a neutral picture profile exist on older Sonys? Or why isn't it that their default, their standard no picture profile, why isn't that pleasing to the eye? So you could just snap a pic or shoot a video and you don't have to color grade or convert log footage if you don't need to. And of course, when you need to, you can shoot an S-Log3 or H-Log3 for that better dynamic range, and you have that flexibility to do both. Why isn't the no picture profile neutral or accurate or pleasing? Well, sadly, it just isn't. So this is the solution. And I think I finally figured out how to use Sony's picture profile menu, and it's only taken me a few years. And honestly, I'm constantly tweaking and learning more. So you should too. And I'm not in any way a color scientist or expert. Yet I haven't seen anyone else do precisely this yet. Some have tried to replicate S-Cinetone in older Sonys, but it didn't do it for me, nor do I think S-Cinetone is without improvement. In many ways, as I alluded to, it's too green for me. So I have made two custom picture profiles that I'll be sharing called C-Cinetone and Z-Cinetone. And trust me, it's easy to adjust these profiles. So I've come up with a quick recipe that is just a tiny bit of customization up front on one of your picture profiles so that you never have to worry about Sony colors or color grade ever again if you don't want to. So here, let me show you. And again, it's easy to do and I'll walk you through it. And then you can dial it into your personal preferences if you want, and you're good to go forever. I'm also going to be continuing to pepper in footage between my Sony A7C with my C-Cinetone custom picture profile with no grading, and then with my Sony ZV1 with my Z-Cinetone profile, along with my FX3 as comparison with its picture profile 11 S-Cinetone, as well as some shots with no picture profile on. Now with some shots I was using a variable ND, which inherently can affect some of your colors, so I mostly try to adjust my shutter speed to correct exposure. I also was very cognizant of experimenting with setting white balance or using auto white balance, as I think the auto white balance in the Sony A7C overcools or corrects, more so than the FX3. So the FX3 usually looks a bit warmer due to this, maybe to overcompensate for the greens. But my hope is that you can use this picture profile without having to worry about any of that. So you can just shoot and show, which actually was fairly easy to create, but then to shoot and share as an export, now, that's where the real problems began. In creating these custom profiles, two main problems arose. The first, which is an easy one to solve, creating a dynamic, neutral, and pleasing picture profile in camera. But that creates the second dilemma, making that image appear as it does in camera on your editing timeline and in your computer. So first, when I take a picture or record a video, I want it to look both appealing and relatively neutral. So you could grade it if you wanted or just leave it as is. Again, this was easier than I thought. So I went in and started tinkering with H-Log3 settings to maximize the dynamic range and nailed a great image in camera. However, this is where the second and biggest problem lies. When you put that footage into your laptop or monitor to edit, you do not get that same pleasing image, and I won't get super technical here, but you will have to find color transforms, conversion LUTs to interpret that footage, and then create output LUTs to then match that look in the edit to the final file. While Of course, color correcting and grading it along the way, because simply you need to shoot in a color space within a red, green, and blue triangle, a parameter of color information called Rec. 709, in the same way that you're going to export or view on a monitor. And all editing softwares, especially on Mac, you're going to have issues doing so, defeating the purpose of a simple picture profile to shoot and show and share with. So the best but limiting workaround is you have to shoot in a Rec. 709 because your displays are Rec. 709 and not BT 2020 like H-Log3 or BT 2100 HDR like how many of our phones may shoot. This is a complicated subject, obviously, but all of our TVs and displays are standardized to a limited color spectrum, a triangle. Yet our cameras and phones have the ability to shoot beyond those limits and hence have a larger triangle of limits like Rec. 2020, which is great when you want to shoot in, say, S-Log3 in low light and be able to really push colors around in post. Yet still, our monitors cannot display that triangle, so our images, color and light, or the luminance value will all get squished, so to speak, and distort how the image in camera will look compared to in the monitor without technical conversion. So long story short, solving the second problem was creating a picture profile that's within that Rec. 709 limit. So when I shoot it and export it, it will look the same, but the dynamic range may be a little bit less. And even still, when I'm editing in my software Premiere, it will not display the correct color gammas accurately until after I export, which is stupidly confusing, and I understand why you might be hesitant and reluctant to try to understand this or to try to customize your own picture profile. But the biggest advantage to do this work up front is simply, for me, I'm just excited to pick up my camera again because it's hard to clarify how rewarding and motivating it is when I'm using a camera to have what I see in front of me be what is captured in the camera. And it sounds obvious and simple, but it brings me back to some of that energy that I had for photography when I first picked up my camera. And to not have to do those like mental gymnastics when I snap a picture and have to try to convince myself that what I just shot may look good in the not too distant future after a lot of labor. So what I see may be what I get. So here are the settings for both the C-Cinetone and the Z-Cinetone custom profiles, if you want to pause and take a screenshot, but they will be written in the description below, as well as here's how to do it with minimal explanations so you can modify these settings if you so choose. So first with the A7C, go into your menu and on tab 1 at the bottom of page 11, go into picture profile. Now choose any picture profile that you're not using and you can always reset it later back to its original. But for now, let's just choose picture profile 4. Now let's first start with black level, which the higher this number is, the flatter your image will be roughly, meaning the less black your blacks will be. And I'm going to lighten mine all the way up to +6. And now to balance that, let's go to gamma, which will change to Cine 4, which is a bit more punchy and still within our Rec. 709 color space. Then we hit menu for back and down to color mode with Pro. Now let's go back up to black gamma and change our range to wide and level -2. Again, we are shaping our black and white color curve here, but I won't go into detail why, but it's worth looking into and I will add an article in the description below. Now next we will go into knee, which I set to manual, and then down to manual set, I change the point to 87.5% and the slope is -2. This is again the shape of the whites and the highlights. Now I go to saturation, I do +9, but play around to what you like. And then you go to color phase, which you can sort of think of like tint roughly, because the more positive, the more magenta, and the more negatives, the more green. And since Sony is known to be too magenta, I cheat into the green to -3, but still it's less green than S-Cinetone is. So the next one is our color depth. Here, play around with this to your taste. But so you can see you have values of plus or -7 for red, green, blue, cyan, magenta, and yellow. So red we have 3, green 2, blue 3, cyan 4, magenta all the way down to -5, and yellow at 2. And now detail, most people like to put this all the way down, but I'm leaving it alone to -3, as I like a detailed image. Now, if you go into adjust, there's a whole bevy of other settings that it just gets more confusing. So I basically leave this as a default, but here they are. So the settings for the ZV1 are different, so take note. And just remember, if you don't like any of this, you can always reset it or you can copy it to another picture profile. And here's some comparisons across all 3 cameras in a tricky indoor setting.
Okay, so this is an interesting test as I am indoors and I'm just checking exposure, trying to match exposure. The settings are as good as I possibly can get. They're all at 1.8, 150th, FX3 is 160th. The ISOs there's some range between 200 and 250. There is probably some white balancing differences too, but I will say the FX3 always seems to be a lot warmer in this setting. It probably more similarly matches the incandescent lighting, as it looks fairly tungsten-y. So in that, the ZV1 and the Sony A7C seem to do better with white balancing or getting an image that I want, because I don't want this FX3, this overly orange image. So A7C, FX3, ZV1. So again, I'm not trying to match the colors precisely. I'm just showing you what I would do if I was creating a picture profile that was similar to S-Cinetone without being S-Cinetone, because I think S-Cinetone has its flaws, but generally is really good. So hence trying to imitate it. Okay, bye for now.
So there's likely going to be discrepancies with color in general, and it is a very difficult topic because everybody's eyes read colors differently, and then eyes interpret colors different than our camera sensors or our displays do. And then color changes depending very much on the context of the scene, as there's tons of optical illusions that colors create depending on what color they are next to or the amount of light nearby. This is again why white balance is also so important. So our eyes lie to us all the time, then our monitors and software try to translate what color information they get too. So no matter what, there is no panacea, something that will solve all the problems all the time. So this is why you should play with the color depth and tinker with the color values yourself, and play with white balance and get yourself a color checker if you want. Or just do what I do, which is leave my A7C in the C-Cinetone and my ZV1 in the Z-Cinetone, and never worry about color grading again, except for when you want to. And then here's my secret to color grading. So thank you all for your time and attention. Please consider following along and subscribing, as I have a bunch more videos on the way. All right, thank you all. Bye guys. Bye.